Welcome to the Friday vlog.
Welcome to the Friday vlog.
And today we thought we would talk about making up after a fight.
Making up after a fight. Making up after a fight.
And one of the themes that has come up in the conversations we've been having is where one person in the relationship feels like they're always the one that's initiating reconciliation.
That would be me, historically.
Yes. And that after time, that person starts to feel resentful that they're always the one that initiates reconciliation.
That would be me, historically.
And so we thought we would talk about it, given that that has been your experience historically, and share what we have seen around that with the hopes it might be helpful.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good idea. So I think, upon reflection, now knowing what I know now, that in those days, how things would unfold is that I was really uncomfortable with the feeling between us, where you evidently are upset and I don't like it, and it's all your fault. But I think upon reflection, I don't think I was too hung up on the fact that it was all your fault. I think I was more hung up on the fact that kind of there's this horrible wall between us, and I found that really uncomfortable. But what I would do is that I was obviously pretty dysregulated, because I'm sure there was evidently a level of me feeling like it's all your fault. But I was much more attached to there being, a good feeling. But so, because I was dysregulated, I wouldn't have the wherewithal or the patience to be able to be in your presence and handle you being in a low mood. And what I misguidedly thought to myself is that I will go in there and I will apologize, and she'll get into a good mood. She'll get into a good mood by virtue of the fact that I'm going to come in and apologize. So I would kind of have to come in and put on a brave face, wear a mask, which is not really necessarily demonstrating how I really felt inside. Apologize and think that everything would be great. And of course, you would see that as your green light to start venting and wanting to be heard. And then I would get really pissed off because, one, I haven't achieved my objective of getting things back onto an even keel, and two, I've really lost face. And that's how things spiraled out of control. But it was a lot to do with, I now know the discomfort I felt with that feeling. And that was really kind of what I was hung up on. I wasn't really so much hung up on whatever contention was going on between us. It was more to do with there's this wall between us, I don't like it. And I don't like the feelings that elicits within me, which is all my responsibility, but I wasn't seeing that at the time.
Yeah, and that isn't a surprise then that things would kind of go south afterwards. So the first part of what Angus is saying is that his initiation of reconciliation and always being the first one to do it was more to do with his internal discomfort than it really was to do with me in our relationship.
Yeah.
And so he just wanted to get out of the bad feelings, and he felt that the distance between us was responsible for that. And rather than being in a really centered, open-hearted, clear emotional space, he was still dysregulated and just trying to get out of his dysregulation by getting us back on track. And when it didn't go the way that he was thinking it was going to go, then he'd get really upset. And then we'd be 2 steps backwards.
Exactly.
So emotional regulation is key in terms of initiating reconciliation. The second part that I think is important is that as part of reconciliation, there usually is the desire for each person to have their experience heard as part of the learning curve of that. And I know that's what I would think when you were coming to me with an apology, whether it was real or not. And I would then see that as the opportunity to then share, this is my experience. This is how I felt when you said this. This is what happened to me. And because you were dysregulated, you would hear all of this as just criticism and me going back into the argument, and then we'd end up having another fight.
Yeah.
But really what felt important to me, and which I think is very different now, and that you're able to do this now, but is just to have my experience heard.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the difference between then and now is that now, and this is what's been so helpful for me, is that I'm not necessarily focusing on the content. The content, yeah, I'm actually wanting to listen to what you have to say, but I'm more observant, not only of your feelings, but my feelings, and I'm really curious about those feelings. It's like when I was first exposed to this understanding, I was kind of hearing these comments about let your feelings be an indicator, and I thought it just sounds a little bizarre, a bit woo-woo, but and I didn't really necessarily take it on board in the way that it was meant. And now I feel like I'm really curious about the feeling content, not so much the, what's happened. It's kind of like what am I feeling, what are you feeling, and what you're feeling looks a whole lot like suffering and pain. And if I'm really identifying that, I'm not necessarily getting caught up in the content. I'm actually really finding myself settled very quickly, and more often than not I come to a place of compassion, and that compassion is really helps me be present, which is what you really require in that situation. And I'm all ears, and that's where things resolve themselves, and that's just how it is.
Yeah, and in that space we could hear each other, because then you can share what your experience was and how you felt, and then we can really look at, hey, what could we do differently next time? So that's a really great learning environment for seeing what there is to see. And then the third part I think is important, is that if you had been able to tolerate your feelings better of discomfort, then you might not have been the one initiating all of the time, and I would have had more time to sort of stabilize myself and come around, and then perhaps I would have been the one initiating, but because you always were more uncomfortable than I was, that was why you were always the one initiating the reconciliation.
Yeah, I had no stamina for that. There is another part to it that I find interesting too, because I think it is around presence. It's kind of like in those moments where I wouldn't be present because I'm kind of in my mind trying to sort of fix this situation, whatever's going on with you. If it's something that I can fix to get me back in a good feeling, which is so ultimately selfish, I think by virtue of the fact that if I'm really cognizant of your feelings, my feelings, your feelings in particular, then that in me getting settled around that, I'm not in my head. When I'm in my head, I'm far away trying to think how I can fix this situation. And you're reacting to that. You're realizing this person isn't present. That's infuriating you even more. But when I'm really focusing on your feelings, I'm like, I'm really seeing you. And that's a game changer, always.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It is a complete game changer. That ability to be seen and heard without an agenda of fixing or trying to change, that just feels so healing and so good. And so those are some of the reflections that come up for us, if there's this pattern of one person always being the one to initiate, to really look at, is it coming from a genuine place of open-hearted, goodwill, readiness? Or is it coming more from Angus's experience of like, I can't tolerate this, let's try and get over this, which sort of rushes the process in a way that doesn't feel good usually to the other person. And then if it is coming from that place, are you genuinely able to then hear your partner's experience and share your experience, so that there can be that presence that Angus is talking about, which is just, it feels really compassionate and caring. And there's learning that happens in that. And if we're stable, we can do that. If we're not stable, if we're trying to rush through the process, then we can't do that. And then the third part is, if you're feeling like you're always the one initiating and you're genuinely getting into that good place, maybe you can hang out in that good feeling before initiating reconciliation, just to give your partner some more time to see if, like me, I think I would have naturally come to the place of wanting to reconnect with Angus, but I just hadn't had enough time to settle. And so I was never really given that opportunity. I mean, I am now, but I wasn't then. And so if that's something that's your experience, are you willing to just give your partner some more time? And if you're feeling okay, then it doesn't really matter that you're giving more time, because you're not suffering. You're getting on with your life, enjoying your life, and giving them the space that they need to come back into balance. And then when they're ready, they'll let you know.
Well said. Patience is a virtue.
That's right. Well, have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.